Hello, am I audible?
Hi, Dr. Palash, all ready?
Yes, sir, I am ready, sir.
Okay, so should we start?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon episode of Pursue. This is Pursue 5E1, which is continuation of general pathology and the genetic disorder. We are streaming live from Kolkata. And today we have the session 4 of genetic disorder, and to talk on that we have Dr. Major Palash Kumar Mandal, who is an MD and Associate Professor Pathology at the College of Medicine, Sagar Datta Medical College, Kolkata. He's also the lab director of Desun Hospital and Heart Institute, Kolkata. Before I ask sir to start, please keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please don't share your screen. With this, let me ask Major Mandal sir. Sir, please start.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we will carry on with our lecture on genetics. That is the part of general pathology as sir has described. We have already taken three lectures so far, and today will be the fourth one. We will be continuing with the Mendelian disorders, and we will go into the lysosomal storage disorders, which are also the part of Mendelian disorders. So,
Yeah, we can see your screen. Please start. Yeah.
right, sir. So to continue with the Mendelian disorders, we will one of the topics is that the disorders associated with defects in receptor proteins. Like last time we had discussed about the various disorders with Mendelian disorders, and this time we will be discussing one of the Mendelian disorders where we see the defects in receptor proteins, and the commonest type is being the familial hypercholesterolemia. And you see, this disorder comes as a short note. That's why I have taken this disease, because there are some of the diseases which come as short notes in undergraduate MBBS exams. Those particular topics have been given special emphasis. So if you can ask me why this has been written in more details, that's the basic reason. So for this in this topic, what do we see? There is a mutation in the gene encoding the receptor for low density lipoprotein, in short LDL, and which is involved in the transport and metabolism of cholesterol. You see, there is the cholesterol is synthesized as well as metabolized in liver, that we all know, and it is stored in various areas, like mostly in the adipose tissue and other areas, but synthesis and degradation both happen in the liver. So liver is the primary site for cholesterol synthesis and degradation. You see, there is a loss of feedback control, and elevated levels of cholesterol happen due to the whenever the receptor for LDL is absent or in reduced quantity, and which leads to premature atherosclerosis and a great risk for myocardial infarction before the age of 20 years. When you see the any any death occurring in a young adult who is having who has died due to myocardial infarction, so you can think that it can be due to familial hypercholesterolemia. Okay, and it is not a very uncommon disease. They have the book says it is quite common, and heterozygotes with one mutant gene representing in almost 1 per 500 individuals. It's so common. 1 in every 500 individuals there may be one person who is a heterozygote, not a homozygote. Since this is a recessive disorder, it will only be expressed in a homozygous status. However, this heterozygotes are very widely seen in our society. Okay, and as you know from biochemistry that about 7% of body's cholesterol circulates in the plasma predominantly in the form of LDL. So cholesterol LDL is very important, and as we have already discussed, liver plays a crucial role. Now what happens is that the first step in the complex sequence of this process of degradation is the secretion of the metabolism of cholesterol is the secretion of low density lipoproteins by the liver into the bloodstream. What happens is that the VLDLs, which are rich in triglyceride, they are released into the bloodstream for storage. They are basically sent to the adipose tissue or the muscle for storage. When the VLDL reaches the adipose tissue or muscle, it is cleaved by an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase and forms a molecule known as intermediate density lipoprotein or IDL. And like its predecessor VLDL, it retains at least 2 of the 3 apoproteins, that is these B100 and E apolipoprotein, ApoB100 and ApoE, they are retained in IDL. Now what happens? About 50% of the newly formed IDL is rapidly taken up by the liver by LDL receptor mediated transport. Now this IDL is transported into the hepatocytes by LDL receptor mediated transport, and IDL in the liver is recycled to generate the VLDL. Okay, so VLDL is again resynthesized in the liver, and the IDL particles not taken up by the liver are metabolized to yield cholesterol rich LDL particles. As you know from general knowledge that LDL is bad cholesterol and HDL is good cholesterol. Okay, so we want less LDL in our body, but if the LDL receptors are not active, LDL is not taken up by the liver for further processing and metabolism, what happens? LDL keeps on accumulating in the plasma. Okay, the plasma LDL level goes up and eventually predisposes to atherosclerosis and leading to the serious disorder, that is myocardial infarction. Okay, now what we see is that there are many cells in the body which have LDL receptors. These are called high affinity LDL receptors. Okay, there are fibroblasts, there are hepatocytes, there are adipocytes. Okay, many cells are there, but the 70% of the LDL is cleared by the liver. So liver is the primary site for clearing of plasma LDL, because once the LDL level reaches up above a certain level, so then there is the hypercholesterolemia happens. Okay, and it is cleared through lysosomal degradation. As you know, lysosomes are an important organelle inside the cell which lead to degradation of various metabolites in the cell. Okay, so it is a cellular process. In the lysosomes, the LDL molecule is enzymatically degraded. There is apoprotein. So apoprotein is hydrolyzed to form amino acids, whereas the cholesterol esters are broken down to form free cholesterol. And this free cholesterol crosses the lysosomal membrane to enter the cytoplasm, where it is used for membrane synthesis. As you know, all the cytoplasmic membranes, they have this lipid. Lipid bilayer is an important constituent of the cytoplasma membrane. So this free cholesterol is used for that membrane synthesis. Okay, and also it helps in the regulation of cholesterol homeostasis, because excess cholesterol will lead to the blockage of the important enzyme called HMG CoA reductase. Okay, so that is very important, you see. So this regulation, this homeostasis is very, very important. If something is extra, so then the body will get a signal, so don't produce more. Okay, something is lacking, the body will get a signal, produce it more. Okay, so this is called homeostasis. This we have discussed off and on in all the topics. So this homeostasis is very, very important to keep a balance. And if the balance is tilted due to some disease or disorder, then we need to take outside measures, outside therapeutic measures to check or to rectify that balance, because that body then is unable to do it by itself. Okay, because the body's own regulatory mechanism is not functioning properly or is lacking, then we have to take some outside measures, therapeutic measures. Understand? So now this exit of cholesterol from the lysosome requires two proteins known as NPC1 and NPC2, named after Niemann-Pick disease. Okay, Niemann-Pick disease in type C, these two proteins are important and deficient. Okay. So this is the chart which has been taken from Robbins. In short, it describes the metabolic pathway of this LDL. Okay, so you see this VLDL is secreted with three apoproteins together. There is ApoC, ApoE and ApoB100. So these three together come from these capillaries in the fat cells. They are released, and the lipolysis by lipoprotein lipase happens, what we have just discussed, and then released in the form of IDL, where ApoC is cleaved out and IDL has got ApoE and ApoB100. Part of it is converted into LDL and part of it is taken up by the liver. Okay, so what happens is that LDL has got B100. Okay, VLDL has got three apoproteins, LDL has got one apoprotein, that is B100. Please remember this, because in biochemistry also, or during your clinical practice, you will come to know why we estimate ApoB100 or ApoA, ApoE others. Why? Because there is a ratio which gives us the ratio between the LDL, HDL and other lipoproteins. Okay, so this apolipoprotein is very important. We can measure that also in the blood. Okay, now this LDL is taken up by the liver and again is metabolized. Okay, this is the cycle. This is the whole cycle of it. And here the receptor is important. So LDL receptor is important for not only uptake of LDL, also uptake of IDL. Same receptor. Name is same because it functions as common receptor for both these things. Okay. Now this is a more detailed diagram again from Robbins. So whenever you read up after my lecture, or whenever you get time, when you read up, so you will come to see these diagrams. So very clearly they show how this LDL metabolism is taking place, and the receptors are there, LDL is incorporated, there are some pits which are formed, then vesicles are formed, and the degradation takes place in the lysosomes. Part is formed to take up the amino acids, that is the apoprotein, and the other part leads to the formation of cholesterol, which is from cholesterol esters. Okay, and then this cholesterol is used for other activities as we discussed. So this is in a nutshell. So you can, whenever you get a chance, please draw the diagram and remember these things, because these are important. You have to develop the concept. Just memorizing one after the other may not be easy, but if you remember the diagrams, it will be easier for you to comprehend the whole thing. That is the whole concept of these lectures. We try to tell you what and how to approach a particular topic. Memory is yours. You have to memorize. How you do it is your thing. Whether you write it down, whether you make notes and make stick-ons. But I encourage my students to write it down, because if you don't write it, you just make stick-ons. The answer may not be a comprehensive answer. Which diagrams you need to put whenever the question is asked. So these are important. So you can start preparing your answers. You see the last 10 years, 15 years questions which are available to you, and accordingly, based on the importance and based on the those things, you can make answers. Okay. And in homozygotes of this disease, they have virtually no LDL receptors. Okay, heterozygotes definitely will have some amount of LDL receptors, but they will have, both will have increased synthesis and less degradation of LDL, and leading to increased LDL in the plasma. Okay. However, the molecular genetics is not so easy. Just the absence of LDL receptors is not the whole thing. Where the problem is lies, if you do a molecular study by seeing the genetic mutations, that is insertions, deletions, etc. So they have found more than 900 mutations for a single disease. Okay, and based on these mutations, the disease has been classified into 5 groups, where the disorders affecting synthesis of LDL receptors are categorized as type 1. In type 2, there is defect in the transport of the LDL receptor to the Golgi apparatus. Third is the binding for the to form the these vesicles. Fourth is the clustering. Third is the recycling. So all there are these groups. There are 5 different groups and more than 900 mutations of this single disease is there. Okay. So you can estimate how a single disease can have so many mutational divisions. Okay. So this is the end of familial hypercholesterolemia. Now we will go to a next disease, that is lysosomal storage disease. So these disorders are basically caused by either a deficiency of specific enzyme that are normally required for the breakdown of some complex substrates in the cell, or due to deficiency or malfunction of activator proteins or transport proteins, leading to accumulation of different undegraded substrates into the within the lysosome. Similar things basically here also, the lysosomal degradation is deficient, and due to some specific enzyme deficiency, the degradation is not complete and the substrate is accumulating in a particular group of cells. The more important cells which are involved in the degradation process are the macrophages. Okay, MPS group of cells, monocytes, macrophages group of cells, also known as reticuloendothelial cells. These cells are important for degradation of various products, and the accumulation is seen in most of these cells, where we can demonstrate the presence of the substrate. Okay, so there are many different types, more than 50 different types have been found out, and obviously they are common in Ashkenazi Jews. Why? Because they have this the marriages between related individuals. Okay, so that is very important, because the disease remains confined to them, and since many of them are recessive disorders, these disorders are expressed in the individuals. Okay, so one of the first diseases to be discovered was alkaptonuria or ochronosis. It is basically an autosomal recessive disorder where there is a deficiency of an enzyme called homogenesic oxidase, which leads to the accumulation of homogenesic acid in the body, especially the bone joints. The joints become blackish in color, and this homogenesic acid is released in the urine to form a black color urine, which is actually becomes black after standing in the air. Okay. So this is called alkaptonuria. I am not going to discuss, since this was the first disease to be discovered. I have mentioned it here. Okay. Now these lysosomes, as you know, you are well aware of this cellular organelle called lysosomes. They have got various functions, and they are basically needed for the degradation of various substrates in the body. They are active at acidic pH, and they degrade the various macromolecules like lipids, proteins, nucleic acid, oligosaccharides, glycosaminoglycans, etc. Okay. So substrates which are delivered, and these are delivered by endocytosis, pinocytosis, phagocytosis, etc. Okay, or by using chaperones. This is the basic pathophysiology, that is the accumulation of undegraded substrates, and leads to the disruption of cellular organization, disturbance of the normal membrane functioning, including signal transduction, ion transport, etc. Okay. So basically, the undegraded substrates, they accumulate and cause a loss of normal functioning of the particular cell and organ. Okay. So lysosomal degradation is, as you know, we have discussed. These are the normal thing. What happens? The substrates, either proteins or lipids, they are degraded. But what happens if they are not degraded? They try to accumulate. Okay, and the organelle is distended. There are many lysosomes in a cell. The cell is distended, and eventually many cells are distended. So the organ itself is distended. Okay, so that is how we see organomegaly, splenomegaly, hepatomegaly. These organs are distended. Same thing. So I am not going into the details. I will give you the PDF of this lecture so you can read up. So now, according to the major subset, we saw that there are more than 50 different diseases under this category. In fact, more than 50 also. But it has been subdivided into important groups. One of the groups is sphingolipidosis, second is sulfatidosis, third is glycogenosis, fourth is mucopolysaccharidosis, and last one is mucolipidosis. So these are the important groups. Okay, these important groups, under each group there are several diseases. So we will discuss some of them, not all of them, because the basic thing about all these diseases is what we have just discussed, that is accumulation of these substrates within the lysosome. Okay, that is the crux, and any disease under this category will have some enzyme deficiency leading to the particular substrate which is getting accumulated. Okay, so this chart has been taken up from Robbins, or the table has been taken up from the Robbins. This is the one table, that is how the diseases are divided. One is glycogenosis, that is Pompe's disease, where the major accumulating substrate is glycogen. Okay, due to a particular enzyme called alpha-1,4 glucosidase. Then comes sphingolipidosis, where we see the enzyme deficiency of this ganglioside galactosidase. Okay, so this GM type 1 galactose is accumulating. Then we see other categories like sulfatidosis. We see this metachromatic leukodystrophy, multiple sulfatase dystrophy, Krabbe's disease, Fabry's disease, Gaucher's disease, Niemann-Pick disease. Of this group, the important ones are Gaucher disease and Niemann-Pick disease. Okay, so Gaucher disease happens due to the enzyme deficiency of this glucocerebrosidase, leading to the accumulation of glucocerebroside. Similarly, Niemann-Pick disease happens due to the deficiency of sphingomyelinase and leads to the accumulation of sphingomyelin. Okay, so Most importantly, Gaucher disease comes as a short note, so we will discuss more about Gaucher disease. Similarly, under the mucopolysaccharidosis category, we have MPS 1, that is Hurler, MPS 2, that is Hunter, and other diseases. Okay, so this is a long list. We have to pick and choose, and we will study the important ones only. Now, under this category of sphingolipidosis, the common one is Tay-Sachs disease. There are two types of sphingolipidosis, GM type 1 and GM type 2 gangliosidosis, and the deficient enzyme in Tay-Sachs is hexosaminidase A. Okay, hexosaminidase A, and these GM2 gangliosides, they accumulate in heart, liver, spleen, and also the neurons of CNS, ANS, and retina. ANS is autonomic nervous system. Okay, so these neurons are also affected, and whenever the neurons are affected, you see there will be neuronal degeneration, there will be developmental anomalies. Okay, so, and what we will see if we do take a biopsy from the brain, we will see the ballooning of the neurons with cytoplasmic vacuolation representing distended lysosomes. Okay, so this is the microscopic image. This is the biopsy which has been taken from the brain, and where we see a ganglion cell with cytoplasmic accumulation of the substrate. Okay. Clinical features, they are usually normal at birth but become symptomatic by 6 months. As soon as the gangliosides starts accumulating, the symptoms they start developing. Okay. So progressive mental and motor disturbance, because they are affecting the nervous system, both the autonomic nervous system, the central nervous system, and the retina. They will have all these features, and blindness. As the retina is also involved, these children will become blind, and they become vegetative because they will not be able to do any action. They become vegetative by 2 years of age. Non-responsive children, they will not be able to talk, they will not be able to respond to any stimulus. So they will be vegetative by 2 years of age. And similar features may be found in another type of gangliosidosis, that is Sandow disease. Okay. Basically, what you will have to remember is that whatever disease we are discussing, the gist is that there is an enzyme deficiency, there is a substrate accumulation, and there is the disease manifestation is different depending on the area where they are accumulating. Okay, so this is the gist. Understand? So in this, the second category of sulfitodisis, what we have seen is that there are two diseases. One is Gaucher disease, one is Niemann-Pick disease. We are discussing here Niemann-Pick disease, which happens due to the deficiency of enzyme sphingomyelinase. Okay, that is in type A and type B, with the deficient enzyme is sphingomyelinase. And in type C, there is not enzyme deficiency, but there is defect in cellular or cholesterol trafficking, that is cholesterol transport. So cellular cholesterol transport mechanism is affected, as we saw in hypercholesterolemia. This LDL transport was being affected. So here the cholesterol transport is being affected in the hepatocytes. That's why here the type C is happening. Okay. Now it is an autosomal recessive disorder, and enzyme deficiency blocks the degradation of lipids, which accumulates in the macrophages. Eventually the lipids are accumulating in the macrophages, that is the sphingomyelin is accumulating in the macrophages. Okay. Of the three forms, the infantile form is severe, which has got extensive neuronal and visceral, that is the liver, spleen, and all the major organs, kidneys, they are involved. Okay. Clinical features appear by 6 months. They will have a large abdomen due to splenomegaly, vomiting, fever, failure to thrive, and psychomotor functioning deterioration. Okay. And early death. Type B is a better one, though there is organomegaly, but nervous system involvement is not present and they survive into adulthood. Type C, more common than type A and type B, but unfortunately they will have a progressive neuronal involvement, and in eye they can see the patients will show a cherry red spot, and the affected cells accumulate this cholesterol, GM type 1 and GM type 2, and the patients will present with all these features like hydrops, neonatal hepatitis, so on and so forth, and psychomotor regression will be there. Okay. Now, how to approach? The general approach we will discuss later, but for this disease, what do? If we do a CT scan of the brain, the gyri will be shrunken and sulci will be widened. That is cerebral atrophy is noted. Okay, these are the signs of cerebral atrophy. In older individuals also, the same CT scan findings of the brain will be found. Okay. When you do a biopsy from the liver, what you see? Large hepatocytes, and there are small intracellular vacuoles creating a foamy appearance which stain for fat. The fat stains are, that is oil red O, Sudan black B. They are normally the staining for fat is done in a frozen section. Why not in a normal routine paraffin block? Because while processing with acetone or other elements, the solvents, the fat is dissolved and washed out. That's why the fat cell is seen as a clear cell in the histopathology section, because fats get dissolved out. Now, if you have to stain for the fat, HNA, this paraffin block section is not the ideal section because the fat has already dissolved out. So, what will we stain? So, if we have to do a stain, we will have to retain the fat, and that can only be done on a frozen section. Frozen section, we do a fat stain, and the name of the fat stains are oil red O, Sudan black B, etc. Okay. Now, these foamy cells, other than liver, they can be present in the spleen, lymph node, bone marrow, tonsils, etc. And what we will see with electron microscopy, there are vacuoles which are cytoplasmic bodies resembling concentric myelin figures. There will be some cytoplasmic bodies with concentric myelin figures known as zebra bodies. Zebra bodies may be present. Okay. So, this is the histology of a liver, that is, the liver biopsy has been taken, and you see the cells having a foamy appearance, these hepatocytes having a foamy appearance, vacuolated appearance. Okay, multiple small vesicles containing this fat or lipid is present. Another sulfatidosis, that is Gaucher disease. It's very common. That is not very common means compared to the other lysosomal storage disease, it is very common. It is an autosomal recessive disorder, and it is the commonest disorder of lysosomal storage category. Okay, and happens due to mutation of gene encoding glucocerebrosidase. We just discussed glucosyl cerebrosidase. Now, glucocerebroside enzyme accumulates in the lysosome of reticuloendothelial system cells, that is the macrophages, and the changes due to the burden of stored material and activation of interleukins. Once the material starts accumulating, so there are a chain of reactions starts happening. The normal functioning of the particular organ is suppressed. There will be some inflammatory cytokines which will be released, and they will create a negative environment for the particular cellular microenvironment. Okay, so this negative environment is leading to inflammation and lot of other activities other than just the accumulation of substrate. Okay, there are three major types of Gaucher disease. Number one is the chronic non-neuronopathic form. Non-neuropathic form, there is the brain is not involved. Here the spleen and skeletal system is involved, that is bone and spleen is involved. In blood we see pancytopenia, thrombocytopenia, abnormal LFT, and in liver We see if we do a liver biopsy, we will see fibrosis, necrosis, and cirrhosis. And if we do a bone marrow study, which is missing here, bone marrow will show presence of these Gaucher cells. Typical Gaucher cells will be present. That is missing here. I will add when I send you the PDF. So this bone marrow is very important, okay, because there is splenic and skeletal involvement. Even in spleen, we will see those typical Gaucher cells. There's large phagocytes which are distended, which have a distended cytoplasm due to the present storage of glucocerebroside. And there will be reduced lifespan, increased incidence of hematological malignancy, Parkinson's disease, and so on. Type 2 is the acute neuronopathic form. That was the non-neuropathic form. It is neuronopathic form. It is very severe. It is very severe. Type 2 is most severe because virtually no enzymatic activity is seen in the tissues. Hepatosplenomegaly, severe CNS involvement leads to early death. Type 3 is intermediate between 1 and 2 but has CNS involvement. Though the children they grow up and reach adulthood, but they do not lead a very fruitful life unless enzyme replacement therapy is given. And once enzyme replacement therapy is given and it is acting, the children can go into adulthood and live a almost normal life, if not fully normal. So biopsy, if you have to take, we can take a bone marrow biopsy. Bone marrow, we can do an aspirate also. We can study from the bone marrow aspirate also. And sites of biopsy will be liver, spleen, lymph node pulses other than bone marrow. And we will see these phagocytes called Gaucher cells. They have a fibrillary cytoplasm, simulating a crumpled tissue paper appearance and have one or more eccentrically placed nuclei. And they stain for PAS. That is periodic acid shift. For periodic acid shift stain, it gives a magenta colored stain if it is positive. Okay. The changes in bone, you see infiltration of the marrow by Gaucher cells, which leads to erosion, infarction, osteopenia, and finally bony fractures. Okay. And bone crisis may develop if it is severe. Bone infarction can lead to bone crisis. An extensive involvement of the axial skeleton leads to fracture at multiple sites, and there may be aseptic necrosis of the head of the femur. In the brain, what can we see? The Gaucher cells are seen in Virchow-Robin spaces, which are the arterioles surrounded by swollen adventitial cells, and no storage of lipid in neurons. Still, there are swollen. Neurons are not affected directly, because Gaucher cells are the MPS group of cells. Okay. So astrocytes may be swollen, but neurons are spared. And changes in eye, pinguicula can be seen. Changes in skin, that is brownish discoloration of the skin, can be seen. Diagnosis of Gaucher disease, blood parameters. These parameters may be elevated like apolipoprotein, ferritin, angiotensin. So this ferritin is one of the indicators of this inflammatory. It acts as an inflammatory cytokine. Okay, so we were telling IL-1, IL-6, these are elevated. So ferritin is also here elevated because it is a marker of inflammation. Various paraproteins, interleukins, immunoglobulins, they are elevated. However, the plasma cholesterol, LDL, HDL, and apolipoprotein 1 is reduced. Okay, and various blood coagulation factors are reduced. And in bone marrow aspiration or biopsy, we see these Gaucher cells which we have described. And this is the microscopic photomicrograph of a Gaucher cell in a bone marrow aspirate, where we see this large cell with distended cytoplasm, eccentrically placed nucleus, and here the same is shown to be positive for PAS. Okay. Treatment is by replacement therapy with recombinant enzymes, and it is effective for type 1 disease. Okay. But The final and better treatment will be a bone marrow transplantation treatment, but that is very expensive and at times it is not successful also. Now another group called mucopolysaccharidosis. Okay, and this is again a large group of at least seven subgroups, MPS 1 to 7, and they are they are due to enzymes which are related for the degradation of various mucopolysaccharides. And mucopolysaccharides, as you know, they are not a single element, they are different. There can be different substrates like dermatan sulfate, heparan sulfate, keratan sulfate, chondroitin sulfate, and so on. Okay, and all are autosomal recessive except one, which is X-linked disorder, that is Hunter syndrome. That is type 2 category. Type 1 was Hurler, type 2 is Hunter, so type 2 is X-linked. Now type 1, that is Hurler syndrome, deficient enzyme is iduronidase. Accumulated substrates are dermatan sulfate, heparan sulfate. What we see is clinical feature developmental delay in the milestones, poor spatial features, macrocephaly, corneal clouding, thick skin, and hepatosplenomegaly, and dysostosis multiplex. Okay, so there can be multiple skeletal abnormalities, and there is a Shy disease which can show cardiac abnormalities also. Hunter syndrome, iduronate 2 sulfatase deficiency, and here also dermatan sulfate and heparan sulfate are accumulating, similar to MPS 1 but without corneal clouding. You see, because what we were discussing is that the enzymes are different, accumulating substrates are different, but where they have similar morphologies depending on the organ involvement. Some will have particular special feature like some corneal involvement, cardiovascular involvement, or neuronal involvement, but some will not have those. Okay, so that is the thing. Because all these are autosomal recessive disorders, you have to know the penetrance is very high. Okay, so if the disease is present, the disease morphology will be, or most morphological features will be manifested. That is the difference between the autosomal dominant disease and autosomal recessive disease. Dominant disease will have a variable penetrance. Okay, they may show some disease active, some form of morphological active morphological features, but all morphological features may not be present. So penetrance may be low, penetrance may be 50%. 50% of the individuals may be showing the features of the disease, that is called low penetrance. Okay, so here, since it is an autosomal recessive disorder, the penetrance is very high, the morphological features are, all the morphological features almost are present in a particular group of disease. Okay, but since the disease has got several categories, several subtypes, so one subtype is slightly different from the other subtype. Understand? Morphology same, all these reticuloendothelial group of tissues, that is liver, spleen, bone marrow, all these lymph nodes are affected, and substrates are found in the MPS cells, smooth muscle cells, fibroblasts throughout the body. Cells are distended with clearing of cytoplasm known as balloon cells, which are again PAS positive. An electron microscopic, you will see distended lysosomes which contain finely granular material similar to this zebra cells, which are seen in Niemann-Pick disease. Okay. Glycogen storage disease, this is the last category of our diseases, and what we see here is deficiency of one of the enzymes involved in the synthesis or degradation of glycogen. And glycogen storage may be limited to a few or many tissues, and glycogen is the storage form of glucose, as we all know, and glycogen synthesis begins with the conversion of glucose into glucose 6-phosphate by the action of hexokinase or glucokinase enzyme. Now, during degradation of glycogen, distinct phosphorylation in the liver and muscle phosphorylases. There are various phosphorylases enzymes which split glucose 1 phosphate from glycogen until about 4 glucose residues remain on each branch, leaving a branched oligosaccharide called limidextrin. Okay, so these are the various steps of degradation of glycogen. We are not discussing the synthesis of glycogen. We are interested in degradation of glycogen because here glycogen substrates are accumulating. Glycogen substrates are accumulating. Understand? So glycogen, which is a storage form of glucose, the glycogen whenever it is degrading, the degrading is partial degradation because one of the enzyme involved in the degradation process is missing. Understand? So the substrate on which the enzyme was supposed to act, that is accumulating. Very simple. And based on the enzyme deficiency, there are about 12 or more groups. And based on the pathophysiology, that is the disease expression, there are 3 types. One is the hepatic type, mostly showing the hepatic involvement. Next is the myopathic type, showing the muscle involvement. Third is the multi-organ type. Okay, so these are the 3 basic categories. What we were just discussing in normal, what happens? The blood glucose goes into the muscle, gets converted into glycogen, and whenever the energy is required, there is glycolysis. Okay, glycolysis leads to release of glucose from glycogen, and the glucose is utilized for the oxidation in various cells. Now, in glycogen storage disease, there is what happens is that the glycolysis is blocked. Okay, so there is low energy output, eventually low glucose level, blood glucose level. Okay, in the hepatic type, what happens? The accumulation is mostly in the liver, where glucose is converted into glycogen, but the glycolysis does not happen, or glycogenolysis does not happen, leading to low glucose. And here the glycogen is stored in the muscle, or glycogen substrate is stored in the muscle, but whenever the energy output from glycolysis is required, it is not happening. Okay, so one is the hepatic form, second is the myopathic form, third is the multi-organ, which is not shown here. It is one of the diseases, that is Pompe's disease, one of the glycogen storage disease, that is type 2, where the cardiac myocytes are filled up with this substrate, that is the glycogen substrate. Okay, so the glycogen substrate leading to cellular swelling, cellular clearing, and which is full of glycogen, and this is Pas positive again. So when you go to diagnose a storage disease, you have to first, with any disease, remember this is the format for diagnosing any disease. How do we go diagnosing a particular disease? How do we write it? How do we ask the person, or what do we have to summarize? Basically, we have to start with the patient's history, how the disease started, how the disease progressed. Okay, then we go to the family history, any family members affected, especially this Mendelian group of disorders. All this we have discussed, the autosomal disorders, the sex-linked disorders, where we saw the various sex-linked disorders like Turner syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome, autosomal disorders like this Down syndrome. Okay, so all these disorders we have discussed. Now we are discussing the glycogen storage disease. They are also the autosomal recessive disorders. Okay, one of them was found to be sex-linked. So similarly, these disorders have a family history. Siblings may be affected. Okay, so we have to find out whether family there is a positive family history or not. But it may be sporadic also. What we have learned from these genetic disorders, though these familial disorders are mostly related to the family. They come from the parents, but they can be de novo also. Okay, so these disorders can be de novo in the first generation. Understand? Then we come to the clinical findings, the examination of the person. The examination, we start with the general examination, go to specific examination of the particular affected organ. Okay, then we order the investigations. Always start with the radiology. Even if you write a pathology answer, do start with the radiology, because that is how we go about diagnosing a particular disorder. Okay, so once we have seen the radiological findings, then we go for the pathological examination, because they are all interlinked. Okay, pathological examination always start with peripheral complete blood count, peripheral blood and bone marrow. If you write in this order, your answer will be complete. You will not skip. But if you write in a haphazard manner, you may skip some of the points. That is why I always tell my students, please write it in a systematic way. Start with the history, start with the clinical finding, go to the clinical findings, then go to the investigations and list the investigations in an orderly fashion. Okay, when you go into the blood examination, then comes the specific examination of the blood, that is the enzyme assay. Here for these disorders, the lysosomal storage disorders, enzyme assay is very important, and you have to know which enzyme to be measured, because this enzyme assay is not easy, is not cheap, it is expensive. So you have to be specific. Depending seeing the clinical findings, you have to come to a conclusion, you have to come to a diagnosis. Even if you are not sure, then you can order multiple enzyme assays. Okay, so but we have to come to a diagnosis before ordering specific assays. Okay, because I told you enzyme assays are expensive. You cannot list 100 enzymes and say do all the tests. No, you cannot do that, because the patients will run away from you. Then next time they won't come to you. So you have to be specific based on the clinical findings, based on your family history, etc. Then you have to come to a provisional diagnosis. Based on your provisional diagnosis, you can order the enzymes. One enzyme may not be sufficient at times, because these have overlapping features. So you have to order multiple enzymes at least, but limit your list of enzymes. Understand? Then we go for histopathological examination of the affected organs. At times we have to do an autopsy, because if the child, it is happening in a neonate, the child may be dead, and we have to do an autopsy. Neonatal autopsies are done. Here in Bengal we do it in IPGMR, and in army we used to do autopsies, though for not for children. Pediatric autopsies were done in AIIMS, PGI Chandigarh, but we used to do adult autopsies. So autopsy is one of the things by which we can learn so many things. Pathological autopsy is very important in learning process for a postgraduate student of pathology. So anyway, so this what we do from biopsy, what we see from biopsy, we take tissue from the affected organ, suspected organ, that is mostly liver, spleen, bone marrow, where we see a particular cell, that is the macrophage, which is enlarged due to the accumulation of substrate. And if we stain them with specific stain, but depending on the disease, PAS stain or on this oil red or on Sudan black in a frozen section, we will come to see the entity. Okay, but that will be non-specific. Many cells will show, many diseases will show similar type of finding. To be specific, the enzyme assay is important, and to be very specific, genetic analysis, that is karyotyping, molecular study. Not karyotyping will not help in diagnosing a particular disease, but will give associated finding whether there is any other associated thing is there or not. But molecular study, that is the mutational study, molecular genetics is very, very important for the final diagnosis of a storage disorder. Okay. Therapeutic modalities, I always tell my students, write something about the treatment. Don't have to go in details. Like in medicine, you are expected to write the treatment part in details. In pathology, don't write the treatment part in details, but at least write something about the treatment. It's like enzyme replacement therapy, bone marrow transplantation, substrate reduction therapy, chaperone mediated therapy, gene therapy, stem cell therapy. So these therapies are available. Many of them are very, very expensive. Some are still in the research process, but you should mention something when you write a note, when you write a short note. You have to mention these things, so that will make your answer complete. With that, we come to the end of the topic. As we discussed, these disorders are a rare heterogeneous group, divergent group of disorders, and they lead to the accumulation of various substrates due to absence of specific lysosomal enzymes. Most are autosomal recessive and found in Ashkenazis Jews. We told you, uh, and the clinical features depend on the accumulated substrate. Proper diagnosis is important because you can formulate a therapeutic protocol like enzyme replacement therapy and so on. And more and more insight is being developed because so many research work is going on. And that's it. Thank you so much. If you have any queries, I shall be happy to answer. If you don't remember it now, you can still ask on this platform, and then I can answer that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Palash. Excellent and very relevant topic. This definitely comes as a short note in all exams and becomes a real big issue if you're doing biopsies and you have no knowledge of storage disorders. Thank you so much. What will be the next topic, sir?
Sir, next topic will be the last topic of genetic disorders. That will be diagnostic. We will discuss in details. That will be mostly oriented towards the postgraduate students. But diagnosis of genetic disorders is very important. We will go into details of diagnosis.
Right. Okay, so take care. Thank you so much. May God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.